Hello and welcome to yet another session of PTE Academic Speaking Describe Image. Today we're going to look at line charts and the template that we can use to answer them and a few real questions which are frequently asked in the PTE. So how do you describe line charts? 5 simple steps. First, define the title, just like bar graph, but mention the time period here, such as from 1979 to 2017. Second point, define the axis, the x and the y axis, or the horizontal and the vertical axis, exactly the same as bar graph. Third point, describe the first trend and the last trend. Fourth point, in case if you have time, describe the median trend as an overview, and finally end with a conclusion. Two things that you need to keep in mind when you're answering line graphs is that the strategy for line graphs is a little different to that of the bar charts. The reason why is because these show the change in data over time in line graph. All right, that means on the horizontal axis it will always be time period. It can be either hours, minutes, days, weeks, months, years. So it will only be time on the horizontal axis. Hence, instead of saying highest and the lowest like in the bar graph, describe if something has increased or decreased or fluctuated over time. In line graphs, you can use some vocabulary like increased sharply or dramatically, which will explain the sharp increase in data, or you can use decrease sharply or dramatically, which represents the lowering or the decreasing data. Or you can also use words like fluctuated over time if a quantity fluctuates over time, or you can use going maximum than minimum, and so on. All right, so these are the words that you can use in terms of a line chart to be able to get good marks. Now let us look at the template that we can use to answer the line chart question. Now this is just a skeleton of what you can use in terms of answering the line chart. If you were able to come up with your own version of it, that's well and good. Okay, this is for people who would want to have a structure towards answering it. All right, so the first point here is the statistical data represented in the given line chart represents important information about. Just read the heading there. Okay, all that you need to do is just put the heading there in the blank space. Okay, the second point is you explaining the axis, right? So the x-axis or the horizontal axis represents time, and the y-axis or the vertical axis represents whatever the title of the y-axis and the units. Just say that there. Okay, as I told you, x-axis will only have time and y-axis will have some data. So just read the title of the y-axis and the unit. The third point, all that you need to do is the most striking feature of this graph is that all the considerable changes in data in the, just say the title of y-axis, is clearly visible with the passage of time. Alright, so this explains the third point, which actually shows the trend. Okay, the fourth point, what you can say is what is more noteworthy about this graph is that due to the dramatic changes in the social and economical structure over time, the trends seem to be fluctuating. You can use this sentence as a common sentence for all your line graphs. Okay, finally, for conclusion, you can also say, hence logically considering the data and the facts, I conclude that there is a strong correlation between the data in the vertical axis and the time. Okay, so this is the skeleton which you can use to answer your line charts. Let's see an example here. This is a graph about the US meat and poultry consumption. Let's use the template and answer this question now. The statistical data represented in the given line chart represents important information about meat and poultry consumption in the United States per capita. The horizontal axis represents time in the years between 1955 and 2017, and the vertical axis represents the meat consumed in pounds. The most striking feature of this graph is that all the considerable changes in data in the meat and poultry consumption is clearly visible with the passage of time. What is more noteworthy about this graph is that due to the dramatic changes in the social and economic structure in United States over time, the trends seem to be fluctuating. Hence, logically considering the data and the facts, I conclude that there is a strong correlation between the data in the vertical axis and the time. Let us look at another example here. The statistical data represented in the given line chart represents important information about all marriages in the last 5 decades. The horizontal axis represents time in years between 1951 and 2009, and the vertical axis represents the number of marriages, both first and remarriages. The most striking feature of this graph is that all the considerable changes in data in the first marriages and remarriages are clearly visible with the passage of time. What is more noteworthy about this graph is that due to the dramatic changes in the social and economic structure over time, the trend in both first marriage and the remarriages seem to be fluctuating. Hence, logically considering the data and the facts, I conclude that there is a strong correlation between the decline in the number of first marriages over time to the increase in remarriages. Now, let us look at some more questions which are frequently asked in the PTE exam. Use the template that I gave you and try practicing the answers by yourself. Each of these slides will run for the next 25 seconds, after which the next slide starts. So I want you to pause the video after 25 seconds, practice the template as we discussed before, and then go to the next question.